Greetings, comrades. My name is Admiral Andre, and I welcome myself back to the channel after a very, very long absence, but I hope most of you will still remember me. So, I would like very much to continue our adventures. It's the year 2020 now. I've seen you in the previous decade last, but anyway, we'll not speak of that, I think. Lots of issues, comrades, lots of struggles, no need to go into all of the details. At the moment, I'm also in the phase of preparing for the next round of lectures that I have to give next week. But I thought still I really want to get back to our channel and specifically KSP. Now, obviously you'll see there is the addition of my visage here in the corner. I'm going to try to do it like this, at least for a while. We'll see how it goes. Obviously my background is not flattering. You did see that in the live stream last time as well. Books and notes and maps and things all over the place. That there is actually a rocket that I made from cardboard, and I painted it to represent my progress with my PhD. But I think you'll also notice, if you did see it in the live stream, it hasn't moved yet. So let's not talk about that. Never ask a PhD student how they are progressing. Anyway, things have been progressing though, but yes, on many different fronts. At any rate, what is it that I'd like to do? I have, of course, been playing KSP in my own time away from the channel. And I've really tried to focus, because I find it so interesting, on all of the possible applications for Apollo. I know we still have so many other things to do, designing or redesigning the N1, and etc., etc. The ISS, I know all of these things. But I've also thought, and this is probably one of the reasons why I took such a long break, that the real focus for me isn't on recreating things per se anymore, I think, because there are so many other YouTubers who do it much better even than I can, such as Gameplay Review UK. I've seen his channel and I'm very impressed by all of these creations. But again, we're not competing here or doing anything, so instead of just building for building's sake, I want to build things for particular series or missions. So I think what I'd like to do here is continue and actually reboot a very short series that I did a while back, which was called The Gift of Apollo, which was not narrated, but it focused on various applications. I just have to disable the notifications there on the bottom, but anyway, various applications of the post-Apollo period, for example, various lunar shelters and so on. And I've been doing this, as I've said, on my private gameplay here. I'll just show you what I have done, and this is tremendously enjoyable, which is why I thought I want to do this kind of thing on the channel. And that is a way for me to get back into the whole process of making videos. So at any rate, this whole gameplay here has focused on that. So I'll just go to where's a good one? Let's just take any of these things and then we'll go to the moon. So let's just do that. I'll just show you quickly some of the things that I have in mind and we can go from there. Right, so here we are on the moon. I am using a few mods, but not as many as I did in the previous episodes of KSP. That was mod madness. And the problem, of course, is we've spoken about this before. There's always new updates, and there's another update coming soon called No Place Like Home or something like that, in which they will revamp the textures on Kerbal and also some of the engines and so on. So obviously it's a futile endeavor to try and bring lots of mods into the gameplay. But I do have a few graphics mods. Spectra compilation, I think, is one of them. I'll put all of the information in the description, as I always do. But that's the one, so it has many different parts to it. And I also am using the Kerbal inventory system and the Kerbal attachment system. That's the only part mods that I'm using. The other things, of course, include Planetshine, etc. That's part of the graphics thing. And the alarm clock and the transfer window planner. I think that's kind of essential, so that's just for information. And that's basically it. No other mods. Of course, Chatterer as well, but again, that's more cosmetic, although it's more in the audio sense. At any rate, what I did here, and this is what we will also do, is I started exploring the moon, so we'll pretend it's the post-Apollo period. So I think we'll imagine that Apollo happened up to Apollo 20, so all of the 3 missions that were cancelled at the end. And then we're now in the after period. But I'll do a more proper setup for that in the first actual episode of that series. This is more just a return to life for me. So a video just to show I'm still here and what I have in mind for us. So I did a resource scan of the moon. And the best area was actually this crater right here. I wonder if I can see that now. Well, I might be able to do it here. Just see if we can get the actual visuals here. I might have to switch to the satellite. Some of this does show that I'm still rusty, but anyway, the point is, I think that's also different in every game. But this crater here had a very high resource concentration, so I thought let's make this almost like a... You know that, what's the series called, For All Mankind? It's on Apple TV, I think. I've never seen that, but I have seen the trailers and small clips. So I know it's kind of an alternate history, best case scenario in a way. So that's the kind of thing that I'm also going for, but more based on what was planned for the post-Apollo period. So this is the basic crater that we focus on. I just called it the Von Kerman crater. We can think of a more creative name for wherever we decide to settle. And if I switch just to the main area, I basically just have a resource operation here as well as a few shelters. So yes, I also have a vessel switcher for KSP mod. That does help quite a lot. At any rate, this is the mining vehicle that I built, and Archibald and Clove are currently working here, 2 engineers. And this design I took from a picture that I just looked up Moon Miner, and this kind of angled design was one of the pictures that I saw. I don't know of any particular plans for the Apollo Applications program where they actually share the mining vehicles and so on. I don't think they ever got to that point, but this is a very critical part of this whole scheme. So I just took this design and put the cabin on the top, and then of course there's I just call it tank, where we do the refining and create some fuel and oxidizer as well as a little bit of monopropellant, and that basically just works on its own. It's not crewed there. Then I also have a fuel truck. Now we can obviously take a little bit more time designing this thing. I just threw it together in a kind of minimalist fashion with lots of open structures and girders and that sort of thing. But this is basically again just to transfer the fuel to the various craft. So the miner will come and dock here at the tank. That's why the docking port is there, but later on that's when I decided to use the Kerbal attachment system, so we can just use the piping. It's much better. I wish we had something like that in the stock game. I know they're putting that fuel valve in now, but maybe there'll be some kind of more in-depth fuel piping transfer system. But anyway, then I have a shuttle here. I just call it a fuel shuttle, but obviously it's not an actual shuttle. But this will take half an orange tank of fuel up to the fuel depot in low moon orbit, and then it will return with the remaining fuel in the lower stage, so it never burns the top part there. And this has worked really well. Then the other thing I have is, you see with the vessel switcher, it's much easier. You just alt and click on where you want to go. Uh-oh, this is not supposed to happen. I tweaked the spring strength of the various legs just so I could make it as flat and level as possible. But I might have to tweak that a little more later. But anyway, this is the LEM shelter that we also saw in that series that I did about the gift of Apollo. I think I actually ended off with that, placing this on the moon and then bringing the crew as well. So this is not intended to fly again. It just comes here, it lands, and then the crew can stay in this for up to 2 weeks according to the original Apollo applications plans. But of course I'm not using life support here, so for us it's much longer. I also have a rover, of course, that was modified with the inventory system so we can bring various equipment along. And then I have another shelter, and this one is more behaving right now. This one is based on a design for the Garrett early lunar shelter, where it was kind of a step up from the one that we just saw, so it has more of a proper habitation, but it's all still using the same heritage from the lunar lander. And this is what I want us to go for in our series as well. We go based on the immediate post-Apollo technology, so nothing fancy, no wonderful moon bases and things. Small shelters that are a step up to the next phase, and then we can go from there in another series perhaps. So this is the one thing. Then I have a new advanced lunar lander, and what makes this so advanced is I also changed this a little. We'll discuss this when we get into the series. All of the Apollo equipment, I've updated it slightly. You'll see we now have these grip pads as a little step there in the ladder. But in any case, this LEM does not separate, so it just reuses the whole thing over and over as the crew go up to the fuel depot. There's also a small habitation section there, and then the next crew rotation comes back down to the surface. I have to not hit the mic here all the time. I'm using a really cheap coat hanger behind this. You'll see it there. There's my wonderful expensive microphone, but anyway, let's not talk about that. You have to use what you have, right? So anyway, this is something I can just refuel all the time. It also has a little port right here for the Kerbal inventory or attachment system. And then of course I have a cargo storage unit and a portable container for the various tools. And so that allows us to reuse things, which is also a step up from just basically disposing of our LEMs the whole time. But we'll first use the original design when we start the series. Then the other thing that I have here, you see various flags. These were survey sites. I actually landed the fuel tanker here first, and then I drove around looking for flat spots on the moon, or at least in this crater, for us to build on, or at least establish the core of the settlement. And these were site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then there's a new site 7 that Valentina has established and scouted for us. I'll just switch to that. It's a very hot day again here. It's obviously still summer in the southern hemisphere, so the computer is whirring along here. I'll have to do my best to edit that out. But in any case, just making you jealous if you are in the cold right now. So, oh yes, this also shows part of the Spectra mod, I think, is the texture replacer, just so you see the reflections in the visors here, which I really love. So this is a nice flat area as well. And Valentina has used the Mobev F1B. Now, of course, this is a poor representation of that, but again, we are limited based on stock parts in KSP anyway. But it's basically a small little flying craft for a single crew member to fly around for relatively short distances over the moon's surface. There's also a 2-person variant, but I haven't built that one yet. But in any case, it's basically just a flying chair. But anyway, yeah, I don't want to go too deeply into this right now, but very dramatic locations here, and I do like the graphics mods. They make it a lot more atmospheric here. So one of the things that I'll do when we start the series, the first episode is going to be about also the first episode that I did for the Gift of Apollo, but that will be narrated and we'll build the things together and use our craft that we've already built. And in that case, I'll send a crew with Apollo, that will be the Saturn 1B, I think, with a resource scanner then to go into a polar orbit of Kerbal as a test for identifying resource sites on the moon. Then, I don't know if we'll do the same episode, the same thing for the moon then, and then we'll take it from there. Basically just landing, exploring a bit with the rover, then bringing the shelter, then bringing the mining equipment, etc., etc. Then the ideal thing is, since it will be a new save game, that we can use that for much longer gameplay again. I know I've spoken about this in previous series or episodes as well, but I think now it's really necessary again because of all the texture upgrades, all of the new changes in KSP. Hopefully there'll be nothing game-breaking in the new update, so we'll see about that. But then we take basically the Apollo technology to Mars or Duna, and then from there as well. So that should be a really interesting thing. And also a good run-up to eventually KSP2 that uses more advanced technology. But we can also do possibly a series after this one for the Russian side, basically, to use the N1 and establish like a rival lunar colony somewhere. And that will be interesting, I think. So then we'll keep that safe. But I want to do Apollo first, just because that was the actual moon lander. So we'll go more or less in that direction. So I just want to show you also the depot that I have. This is nothing fancy. The inclination here is 62.5 degrees for the orbit. Switch 2. So I'm still toying with the idea of putting another one in equatorial orbit and then shuttling the fuel in between. And speaking of that, that will also actually be a good setup for another future series in which we use the space transportation system as it was originally envisioned, with of course the shuttle going just to low orbit, and then there's a nuclear tug that takes things to the moon and another tug that lands, and it was a whole system basically. So that would be an interesting follow-up to also the Apollo technology. In any case, this is just a little habitation module here. This was also based on one of the Apollo designs for the applications program. I think this was Apollo X, that was supposed to be a Venus flyby mission. And then I'm just using the S4B upper stage as the fuel depot here. So again, this is what I want to do. We reuse things that exist already. We don't build fancy technology and so on. And then there's of course the latest Apollo. I don't have a number here, but we should keep count of them in our gameplay, of course, because that will be a nice thing to do. So I think we'll start with Apollo 21 then. Just want to focus on this aim camera. And here we have Melvin, Sergey and Bill. They've just finished their rotation on the moon where they were working in the mining vessel. And that's basically it. I don't think there's really anything else. I might just show you one more thing. Space Center. There's nothing particular in the map that I have there to show you. It's more in the VAB now. Just go back to the tracking center. So there's the fuel depot, the various tanks and the surveyors and so on. There's an Eve sample return thing that I planned at one stage, but we can go back to that at a later point. There's also a kind of a Duna mission that I was building with a shuttle, but that's all incomplete, so we can just ignore that. But I did make some updates to the space shuttle. That's just what I want to show you. So we can use that after the Apollo series again. And my goal for this is also to share the craft files. What is it? Kerbal X? What's the site called? But you know, with a more proper sharing, not just on Steam. so people can actually use the craft if they want to. So there's my baseline Apollo. So I've updated this one, various action groups here, like the center engine cutoff of the first stage, the center engine cutoff of the second stage. The lander here, of course, it includes the stock cargo pods, and then again the grip pad thing here, and I just redid the struts there and small things like that. And I've also added a reaction wheel in here just to make things a bit easier to control. But let's just have a look at the shuttle. I just want to see that my webcam is not blocking anything here. We'll just have to focus on that. Fuel truck shelters, what was it called? I think it was this one. So the difference here from the one that we built together before is this one uses the new stock Clydesdale solid fuel boosters, and I have also replaced the engines of the OMS system here with monopropellant engines, which is a bit more appropriate, I think. So we also rather have a smaller segment of monopropellant fuel instead of the bigger liquid fuel and oxidizer segment. And I think it works well. It's very underpowered, but that's appropriate for a low orbit vehicle. It's not supposed to have the capability of going to the moon, for example. And that's basically all I did here. Let's just see the inside. There was my test. It can take a full orange tank and another quarter to orbit, so it does work fully still. And oh yes, one thing I also did was I had to move again all of the various monopropellant thrusters, because the newer version has a much you see there, it has a much lower tolerance for clipping, where you can see the hull actually through the nozzle, and you know I don't like that sort of thing, so I have to move them a little bit. What else? Is there anything else? But I did the same thing with Apollo as well. Just go back to that. So also what I did is I replaced, you know, the various Ullage engines and things like that with the new models. There with the Spider, of course, there's a newer one. These ones are also replaced, and so that the nozzles don't clip. There's just one thing I still want to change here, and I can actually do this now, and that is I don't like how the orange tank is clipping on the inside edge of this engine here. So I just want to move it microscopically. Let's just see, is everything still normal? Yes, save. So I have to be careful what I do with this particular Apollo, because it's my standard one now. And that's basically it. So yes, I think that'll do, comrades. This is just a very small episode. I just wanted to give some proof of life and some ideas of what I have for the future. So thank you for sticking with me, if you are still there and if you still do remember me. But yes, it's 2020. It's been 2020 for a month already, and one of my New Year's resolutions was to make a video at least once every week. So you know I failed abysmally with that already, but hopefully I can do something about that now. And yes, I hope to see you soon, comrades. I hope you're all well and that life is treating you at least decently. I had a very big struggle after all of the things that happened last year that I did share with you in another video that I later deleted. But yes, let's not dwell on that. Let's move forward in a positive spirit, right? So I'll see you soon, comrades. Hopefully, let me think, either tomorrow or the day thereafter. I'll try, because not later this week, then I really have to get into the thick of the preparations for my lectures. I'm just giving 2 lectures this time, but last year it was just the one big lecture basically. And yes, that's it. See you soon, comrades. Have a fantastic and wonderful and prosperous day and month and year and decade and century.